Hi and welcome to CX Today. I'm Susie Harrison, Head of Content, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Joel Neeb, who is Chief Transformation and Business Operations Officer at 8x8. So thank you for joining me, Joel.
Hi, Susie. Great to join you.
So today we're going to be exploring AI in customer experience and balancing innovation, regulation and human touch. So according to our AI in CX survey from 2024, we found that more than half of contact centres are utilising Gen AI to auto-generate replies for agents. So how do organisations balance AI-generated responses with human oversight to ensure personalisation, compliance and brand alignment?
Yeah, great question. So as you think about what the agent is contending with, what we want to equip them with are the summaries of every conversation that's taken place in the past for that customer, so they don't have to repeat themselves. You already have context waiting for them. AI does a really good job of that right now. You can summarize, especially when you have an omni-channel approach, all the messaging that went back and forth, all the previous conversations that were voice, and as the agent's picking up that phone, they can get that summary ahead of time, so they can have the context and some empathy, which of course is the ultimate goal. And then when they're on the call, there are options to nudge them and coach them with opportunities to have a specific type of response that's on brand and is in accordance with how we want the process to flow out. And once again, with the customer's outcome always in mind. And so best supporting them. So from that perspective, I think all the agents would agree that that's something that they appreciate. They'd rather know some of that context ahead of time. If they can get a nudge from the system to say, here's the direction you might want to take this answer, then that's appreciated as well. And then the furthest direction that we haven't really explored yet is, what is the fully automated version of that? And that's where the agent's not involved whatsoever, but we're not along that path at this point. We're just giving the agent as much as possible to equip them to best serve that customer.
Yeah, and I think the consensus I'm seeing from all the conversations I have is that we're not talking about AI replacing human agents in the contact center. Yep. We're talking about how they can have, a symbiotic relationship where the AI can perhaps do the mundane tasks that frees up that human agent to work on more nuanced, complex tasks that require that, level of human empathy and human thinking. But given that many companies are investing in AI to reduce headcount, what are you seeing and what's your opinion on the direction of movement there?
Yeah, I think investing in AI to reduce headcount at this point is potentially misguided. I think that AI is a great augmenter for our teams. It helps us to go faster on the things that we're already doing. I think if you're looking to reduce headcount via AI, you're probably going to miss out on some of the nuances and the truer understanding and depth that your employees have that you just won't be able to replicate with AI, certainly not today's version of AI. And so the best opportunity is to train our teams how to leverage AI. We like to say, the old adage, I guess it's old at this point, is that you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you could potentially be beaten in the market by somebody who is using AI better than you, effectively, right? It's just that much of a force multiplier.
And sort of thinking about how the two can work together, do you think governments can mandate the right to speak to a human in customer service?
So it depends on from whose perspective, and so and this is me stretching outside of my typical territory and saying what the government can do. But if we're looking at the customer's perspective, I can tell you examples of where I've appreciated having a conversation with an AI tool, probably more than I would have had with a person at that point. I use it for personal therapy and asking questions that I may or may not want to ask to another person. And so I can imagine circumstances where I actually like to talk to that AI tool. It gives a really comprehensive answer. It does a pretty good job at creating empathy. Yes, it's not a human, but it also removes the complexities of having to talk to a human about those things as well. And there are other times where I do want that human touch and I want to have that experience. I want them to understand what I'm going through. And so from a user of this, I certainly wouldn't want it mandated that I always have to talk to a person, but I also wouldn't want to lose that capability to have the human touch and have that human experience at some point.
Yeah, I think it's also because people are perhaps a bit circumspect about just dealing with an AI or a bot. But I think as it rolls out so widely, I think we're seeing that a bit less now and people will accept that what an AI can do for them.
Yeah, I think more and more as they have that experience, I certainly was skeptical at first. Like I'm not going to enjoy talking to something that's cold and doesn't have that human empathy. But gosh, it's coming along really quickly. it's impressive how it gets to the heart of the matter when I'm talking through challenges. If I'm having some conversation with my kiddos and I'm trying to approach it differently as a dad, I can talk it through with AI and it comes up with an answer a lot faster than I could on my own. And so it's pretty amazing.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess sort of staying on that legal standpoint, we reported in CX Today this week that the US state of Virginia is poised to pass a statewide law that will regulate the use of high-risk AI. And by high-risk AI, we mean decisions like when it's used to automate decisions on customer eligibility for products or services,
Sure.
or to generate personalised financial offers and recommendations. Where do you think we're moving on that? Do you think others will follow suit?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And so, in other words, at least setting a rubric out there for when to automate and when not to automate, right? And so, internally at 8x8, we have AI use cases in the following three categories. We augment our decision making with AI, we automate with AI, we completely hand it off to AI, or we simulate a scenario with AI. That's it. They really fall into mostly those three buckets. Augment, I want you augmenting everything with AI. Writing an email, you can write it better with AI. Put it through there and have it improve it. Making a decision, have AI help you to scope out the problem statement and help you to consider both sides of the decision. I don't want to hand that decision off to AI though. I don't want to tell AI that it's the thought leader in the conversation, but it is a thought partner, and that's an extremely valuable thought partner that we shouldn't overlook from this point forward. Now, the automate piece though. We've said internally at 8x8, I only want you automating in very specific circumstances. Automating is where I'm going to hand this off to an AI tool to do it on my behalf. And that is something that's high impact, high effort, and low risk. And so what that means is I want to find those things that are the bottleneck for execution right now. And so it's something that is challenging for me to do. Maybe it's something I don't like doing, like a menial task that I prefer not to. And then it's also high impact. So if I could do it more, it would have an impact on the outcome of our mission and better supporting our customers. And then that low risk piece is very important because I want to do things that don't expose hallucinations to the customers and don't run with a decision that's going to have secondary or tertiary effects. And so low risk is really important. And we can think of some of those things that we'd automate in that process. And then the last consideration for automation is, have I optimized whatever process I want to automate? In other words, we have to be very careful we don't automate our inefficiencies, right? Those things that are inefficient, because if we just go faster at being more inefficient, then that's not good for anyone. And so you don't want to automate those things that are inherently inefficient. And you say, well, why does that exist? You'd be surprised in a lot of companies and teams, you just overlook those things you can't do very often. But if you did them 100 times faster, that inefficiency would actually be debilitating for your team.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you've picked up on some of the downsides of AI, because we've said a lot of good things, but obviously there are a lot of concerns about privacy, security, the ethical implications of its use. Right. So as AI takes on that bigger role in customer interactions, how can companies ensure that transparency, accountability, and particularly in avoiding bias and misinformation, which we know that can come from AI-generated responses?
Yeah, it just absolutely needs to have governance internally, and we need to be able to sample that. And once again, if we're going to point that towards customers in particular, if we're going to point it outside of our company, then it needs to be something that we're very confident is not going to take us down a path where it's going to have some negative effects if and when it hallucinates. And the thing I'll add, though, is that, so I come from a previous chapter professionally as a pilot, and I flew 3,000 times. And so in my world, initially I was a little reluctant to put on like autopilot and, look down inside the cockpit. It's kind of a scary feeling to think that I'm not looking at where I'm going in that moment. But you learn to trust it because you learn it actually is pretty reliable. It's not perfect. And so I do have to keep looking up. But it's almost better than I would fly it in certain circumstances. And so I learned to trust it and learned when to pay attention to it. But it required constant inspection. And I think that's how we should treat AI. Something that's a tool to allow us as humans to rest a little bit and maybe not have to be going 100 miles an hour, but also something that we need to continuously monitor and make sure it's having the desired outcome.
Definitely. And I guess we'll see a similar scenario play out in the self-driving cars and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And we have human biases as users too. So self-driving cars at this point are about 11 times safer than human drivers. And they've run the statistics because, of course, all these cars are capturing all of this data. And there's some nuances to that. Maybe it's because it doesn't speed. Maybe, who knows what all the other things are that stop a self-driving car from getting into more accidents. But suffice it to say that the data is out there that for whatever reason they don't get into as many accidents. On the human side, though, we still have more of a negative reaction when there's something that takes place where it was not under human control, right? It almost feels like it's worse, and so it's a higher barrier, a higher threshold for us to get over to accept that we're going to hand over that autonomy to something else.
I think it's all just cultural shift, isn't it? Like using AI, all these things that the machine's taking over. It's a sort of a mindset that we have to get into if we want to embrace it.
Exactly. Sometimes it's a little creepy and unsettling, but it's the direction we're going. This has happened very quickly for everybody, and AI has become a great force multiplier to be productive. And to your point, it's just a tool, so it's not inherently good or bad. It could be good or bad depending on how we use it, and so it's very important to have these conversations.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really interesting. And of course, we'll be continuing the conversation on CX today as we cover 8x8's developments and, of course, AI in general. So thank you to Joel for joining me. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Please do like and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed the video. And of course, stay tuned on cxtoday.com for more news like this. So thank you.
Susie, appreciate you having me.
Thank you.